So there was this article published yesterday evening by Ars Technica that shines a light on some massive issues connected with the development of the new Battlefield game, and also gives a behind-the-scenes look at the studios and the people working on it. And the article is quite long and is a good 20 to 30 minute read, so I'm gonna sum up the most important things we can take away from it in the video, but as usual the link to it is also in the description below, so you can read through it yourself if you want to. So the article is named "What's Wrong with AAA Games? The Development of the Next Battlefield Has Answers." EA insiders describe stress and setbacks in a project that is too big to fail. So the author has talked to several current and former employees that have worked and are still working on the new Battlefield game, and it's quite interesting what they have to say. And the article starts saying that publisher EA is in full production on the next Battlefield title, but sources close to the project say it has faced cultural clashes, ballooning budgets, and major disruptions that have left many team members fearful that parts of the game will not be finished to player satisfaction in time for launch during EA's fiscal year. So the fiscal year 26 that he's talking about here, which runs from April 25 to the end of March 2026. And within this time frame, the game is supposed to launch. And according to these first-hand accounts that are the sources for this article, changes in the company's structure have led to extraordinary stress and long hours for the developers, and that this project had more people burning out and needing to take a leave than they'd ever seen before. And on one hand, this has to do with the massive layoffs that EA had done during the past few years, in some of their studios at least, but it also has to do with the goals that EA has set for the new game, and these are actually a bit crazy, at least crazy numbers, because according to the article, they want to reach at least 100 million players after release. In comparison, Battlefield 1, which is the most successful Battlefield game to date, only had a bit more than 30 million players. So what they're aiming for is more than 3 times the amount of players. And to achieve these high numbers, the new Battlefield is the largest the franchise has ever seen. So a free-to-play Battle Royale mode was made alongside a 6-hour single-player campaign, a traditional Battlefield multiplayer with modes like Conquest and Rush that we've already seen in the gameplay leaks, a new free-to-play mode called Gauntlet, and the community content mode Portal. And to be able to realize all of this huge project of a game, it has the biggest budget ever as well. According to the article, the project targeted a budget of more than 400 million back in early 2023, but that was already more than what was originally planned. And here's where it gets interesting, because the author writes that major setbacks significantly disrupted production, and hundreds of additional developers were brought onto the game from various EA-owned studios to get things back on track, which significantly increased the cost. And now they seem to be well north of that 400 million amount. And one reason for this increase in costs was the closing of Ridgeline Games back in 2024. If you can remember, this was the studio around Marcus Leto, which was responsible for the single-player campaign of the game, but allegedly they couldn't meet the expectations of the higher-ups, which led to the studio being closed. And as a result, DICE, Criterion, and Motive Studios had to take over, and at least according to the article, had to pretty much start from scratch again with the campaign, which set the development of the campaign back by about 2 years. But at the same time, the studios that are working on it now and it took over still had to meet the same deadlines and the release time frame for it that Ridgeline Games had to meet. And as of spring 2025, it was the only part of the game that had failed to reach the alpha state. So now it's speculated that the campaign will be a lot shorter than it was supposed to be and will only be 6 hours long, and that it will not be finished in time for the release of the main games. So it is possible that we might see it at some point after release. Additionally, there there seem to be tensions between the European and the American studios, as DICE, who is located in Stockholm, seems to feel like they're only a supporting studio for the American leadership now, instead of the leading studio in the game. And according to one source, DICE wants to build the best game and they want to achieve the greatest in terms of the game experience, and that they're also used to having more creative freedom and a greater influence on timelines and targets for the game. And now with the American lead, the emphasis is on quarterly profits and on exciting the investors and shareholders. The article also paints the picture of a work environment where pointing out problems doesn't seem to be welcome, because the author writes that in some cases employees who flagged problems believed they were punished, and 2 EA employees each told him that they found themselves cut out of meetings once they had raised concerns. Additionally, it is also claimed that the game did only pass alpha stage, with some tasks still open and not cleared even for multiplayer, which could lead to problems and compromises down the road. And because of these issues, the majority of the people the author spoke with said that they expect planned features or content to be cut before the game actually launches, or that this content might be pushed to season 1 and 2. And this could also include the single player campaign, because the focus is on the multiplayer of the game. But I think that's good news. Now, from our perspective as Battlefield players and fans of the franchise, what can we take away from this article? Well, first of all, that we shouldn't set our expectations too high for the launch of the game, since it could still be not as polished as we might expect. But I don't think I need to tell this to anyone, because we're still talking about a Battlefield game, and no matter how good it might look in the leaked gameplay, a flawless launch would be very uncommon for the franchise. Still, in my opinion, it already looks a lot better than 2042 did at launch, but I'm not quite sure if 2042 is really a good comparison, because this was really a mess when it launched, and I don't think we ever had such a mess before in the history of the franchise. Secondly, we might not see the single player campaign directly at launch, but I had said that before, or at least that's what I'm guessing, that's what I'm taking away from this article. And if we do, it might be short and reduced to a minimum. I wouldn't mind to play a 6-hour campaign. I think this is a pretty okay length, but I still hope they just delay it and deliver a good campaign later instead of a half-baked and rushed one at release. And then third, EA doesn't seem to have any understanding of the actual Battlefield player base. Why would they think they can achieve similar numbers to Call of Duty or Fortnite when these games have a completely different audience? So I think that EA should look a little bit more into what the actual audience for Battlefield is, and then set more realistic expectations for them and also for the developers. And what I'm reading from this article as well is that they should start listening to the developers a bit more instead of to the investors and shareholders. Because talking about this, I also found an interesting post from a former DICE developer about the weapon system in 2042. Here, someone had written that the devs are not listening, especially when it comes to locking weapons to classes. So I think they were talking about Battlefield 6 or Battlefield Labs and this whole class system that we got presented there. And here the staff says that this is not true, that they're not listening, because the open weapons were already a controversial topic internally during the development of Battlefield 2042, and that if these decisions were made by majority votes among the developers, things would look different. So the old narrative of the devs having no clue what the players want doesn't seem to work here anymore. Instead, it seems like they are suffering from the decisions higher ups are making as well, just like we suffer from them as players. And I think overall this article is pretty good. It's a pretty interesting read, and it paints a picture of an industry where profit and pleasing investors and shareholders is more important than anything else. And yeah, I know know this doesn't come as much of a surprise, but it's still interesting to read this with the sources being actual developers instead of just maybe leakers or industry insiders. The only thing I'm missing here is the mention of Battlefield Labs, which I think would be on a more positive note towards the game, because even though we don't know if the feedback that is given through labs will really have an impact on it, at least it gives the developers a chance to test features and to test the performance of the game and the servers before the actual release. So I hope that with this, chances are lower that we're running into a similar catastrophe that we had with 2042. And yeah, that was it for today. As usual, I'm interested in hearing your opinion about this, so be sure to write it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. I'm the Catwoman, and you are awesome.